Hi, hi everyone. So such a pleasure to have Lulu on board today. It took us a little bit of a time to come in because of technical glitches, but I'm glad that we are here eventually. I'm so excited to have you here today afternoon, Lulu. Welcome to Shivnadar University, and this is our first CXO live series.
Thank you so much.
Brief background of Lulu. Lulu is currently managing director of Landor and Fitch, and in her career, she did her MBA from SPJ in Institute of Management and Research, and she has been with Ogilvy Consulting before. Also, the country director of Landor Associates, and then managing director of Landor and Fitch. And in her stellar career, she has done many transformational work with brands. So we are looking forward to having you here. Thank you for joining us. So if we can go in directly to the way in which we are organizing this. Of course, we are a little late, 10 minutes late, but maybe we will talk for around, say, 20 minutes or so, and then we will open it up for audience questions. Does that work for you?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Sorry about all of these tech glitches. Hopefully, we'll have a conversation for the remainder of the time.
Yes, this is one of the things about the times we live in, that we are so dependent on online that things can go awry at some point of time. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about. So tell us a little bit about your first job, the first job you started after business school. Where did anything when you were doing took up that role? What was it like, and was there something that you wished was taught to you in school, but you had to learn on the job? So was there anything like that?
Yeah, it's a really good question because a lot of the learning, Paramita, initially happens at home. And I found that when I was in school, both undergrad and in business school, many of the things that my parents used to say when I was a teenager came back to me. So, for example, substance more important than style. Studies are super important. Sports are good as distraction, but in those days, certainly we couldn't make careers in sports. It was very few people who could. Parents told me a lot about giving and giving more empathy and respect, and they always said, read, 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 right? And in my high school, I had actually learned a lot about how it's school first, house next, and self last, house being the school house. So all of those things really came back to me. But I would say that some of the things that schooling and parenting didn't really prepare me for when I went into the real world was taking charge of my destiny. Really navigating the corporate workspace. I wish there'd been some kind of orientation where you could ease into work, but I think you're thrown in and you have to sink or swim. And in that regard, some level of confidence building, more conviction in who you are, what you stand for, the value that you bring to the table, the ability to clearly articulate your ideas, be put under scrutiny, how to really be comfortable with authority of all levels, how not to bow down to seniors and be so awed by their magnificence, but actually also have your own value that you're bringing to the table, and just much better communication skills, written as well as oral. I think in business school, I was at SPJN Institute of Management and Research. We did do a lot of presentations. We knew how to put PPTs together, but could we present in a way that was really clear, convincing, and we really believed in our ideas? I think that would have been all good learning. And I think from my parents' perspective, a lot more emphasis on grooming interpersonal skills development. It's not, while it is about you and being confident in the workplace, I think in the first year, it's really navigating those relationships. My parents had always said, read, 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 but I wish they had made me immerse more in the cultural context, movies, folk tales. When you're in advertising and marketing, that cultural context is so important. And some people had grandmothers who told them amazing stories, and they got that from the family. I didn't necessarily get some of it, but I wish I had done more of that by the time I entered the workplace. It was so powerful.
Yeah.
So those are some things, if I reflect and look back. Also learning to learn. One of the most important things in the corporate world is you learn somehow in school, but when you're in the workplace, learning is very, very. So how do you be a lifelong learner? The importance of learning, for it, even when you started working. Those are things I wish somebody had given more guidance on. I stumbled upon it mid-career.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, Like the other day, I was listening to a podcast by a neuroscientist, and he was talking about the power of stories. We already know the power of stories, but he was saying how, gratitude, when we do gratitude lists and try to understand, have well-being, it doesn't work. It works through stories. So now that you talk about stories, and I might catch you on that a little later, but I just wanted to keep that in mind, that stories are so important, especially when you are doing brand transformation. So because you are in branding and brand consulting, I'm really curious to know, what you learned in school about branding and what you know now. Has branding evolved over these last 20 years, like in your mind?
Oh, yes, absolutely. In my class, I was also a person, class of 2000 SPJIMR. Everyone knew that I was crazy about brands. But the way we brands was so theoretical. We had those definitions of brand as a promise, as a relationship. We did some branding case studies, but it was at a very, very theoretical level. I wish we'd done more experiential work in actually creating new brands or refreshing brands. And the coursework actually today incorporates it. And I actually teach a class on strategic brand management for SPJIMR, where I try to bring in more of the practice because I felt that was missing when I learned. But Paramita, to answer your question, branding has evolved. And the analogy that I like to use is that of a wrapped candy. So before, it was all about the shiny packaging that attracted you to products, right? It was the wrapper that mattered. Even if you go back to the 1950s and the whole emergence of advertising, it was about the Mad Men, and it was about the promise that was being built. A brand was like a cathedral. Once you established it, made the promise, all you had to do was keep shining. But that doesn't work anymore because I believe the candy has been unwrapped. It's not just the wrapper, but the actual product. Where was it made? Who made it? Was it made ethically? What are the ingredients? What's the whole supply chain? The interrogation of the product, its functional value to consumers, there's a lot more scrutiny on product. Then the next level, service and experience. It's no longer just about the product, but the additional layers of how you buy it. Once you buy it, is there a service element to it? That's becoming increasingly important as well. But then, of course, some tech companies believe that, yes, it's all product and service. The branding is not important, but you still need a wrapper.
Yeah.
You still need to out. It's just that the wrapper has to truly reflect what's inside. It can't be moved from it. It can't make a promise that's divorced from reality, because the shift branding has been from brand as a promise, as an image, to brand through experience. Today, the brand is only as good as you experience it. So if I call Vodafone and I'm routed to their call center and I have a bad experience, for me, that is the Vodafone brand, irrespective of how good the plan may be for my needs and how satisfied I might be on all the other fronts. So brand as an experience is truly what defines brands today. So it's the 360 experience. When you were a brand manager 20 years ago, you didn't really worry so much. But today, there's not a brand manager worth his or her salt that wakes up in the morning not afraid that something would have been posted on social media, something happens in one country or the other, managing a global brand, which might upset your brand. Because there are myriad touch points.
Yes.
And the branding is how you influence these touch points. So net, your brand emerges more positive than negative. You will always make mistakes. There will be unpleasant brand experiences that your customers will have. But when you look at the whole 360 universe of where all your brand is, as a brand manager, how can you ensure that your customers are having the most positive, engaging relationships with your brand? So brand as image to brand as an experience that has to be very actively managed is the biggest change in brand.
Yeah, this is amazing. Like when you said that, it is no longer a wrapper, right? So it's more than that. And still wrapper is important. Wrapper is important because that's the first thing that people will see. But it's about like always being on the gunpoint in some ways, because like you said, there are myriad touch points everywhere and people are watching you. And one bad experience might kind of, trigger things out of proportion. So talking about unpleasant experiences, has there been any brand that you were managing or helping transform that that had certain, quote unquote, unpleasant experiences for customers, and it blew out of proportion? And how, if that was the case, what would you tell today's brand managers? How would they handle such a thing?
I'll use an example from 25 years ago when Lando, the company then, today we're Lando and Fitch, that time we were the Lando part of it, was involved in Air India and the rebranding of Air India. And Paramita, when we did rebranding 25 years ago, we were only involved in identity change. How the design, the logo changes. And what happened when Air India went through the branding exercise then is that the face of the brand changed, but nothing else changed. The planes were still planes, the service was still old service, and it was quite a disaster because people said, Air India spent so much money and what has really changed? That really smartened us as a company, and I think branding has evolved also. It's no longer just lipstick on a gorilla. If you go in rebrand, you must be committed to ensure that you have a new refreshed promise. Otherwise, it's going to fall flat with your customer base. So if it is the new India, what's the new service promise? What's the new in-flight experience? What's the new onboarding experience? So the promise that you're making has to be delivered. Going back to experience, a new brand can only signal change. It can only signal that the brand is refreshed, it's more relevant, it's more differentiated. But ultimately, how customers experience the new brand is what will truly create value for customers. And so what we tell our clients is that when you're going in for a rebrand, the new brand meaning has to be deeply embedded within the organization across all departments, not just marketing.
Yes.
Everybody, the front-facing staff, to all the departments have to truly understand what the brand is and live the brand, as they would say. And then the promise has to be manifested in the external touch points of the brand.
Yes.
For a financial services organization, people, for a B2B product manufacturer, it could be how they present themselves on the website, in trade shows. For FMCG products, it could be the packaging and the actual experience of the product itself. So these are the realms in which the delivery has to truly match the change that you are projecting. So it's very, very important not to be seduced by cosmetic change. It's easy at level. You know, we worked on Cafe Coffee Day many, many years ago. And when we rebranded Cafe Coffee Day, the management team had actually not invested in upgrading the physical infrastructure of the cafe. So there was a makeover, and the brand certainly became fresher, more relevant, and connected with the youth. But the minute Starbucks started coming in more aggressively, Costa Coffee, etc., Cafe Coffee Day's experience started looking a bit old and tired.
Absolutely.
This is for also many of the brands in the hospitality, including the Taj, the Park, Oberoi's of the world. They've all been around. Their properties have been around for a while. But the new guys, the Marriotts, the Hyatts, the Radissons of the world have an opportunity to create a brand spanking new product. And therefore, when you're going in for a rebrand, you have to think not just about the communication, but the actual product. Going back to the candy being unwrapped, it's the product itself. And in the case of coffee shops, in the case of hotels, it's the actual experience, the physical space, the quality of the furniture, the environment, the ambience, all of that make a difference.
Yeah, this like totally like, makes sense. Like when you talked about Taj and you talked about the new age chains which are coming in, that stands for something, right? And so therefore, when you also said that it's also about the operationals, basically when you said you can change the branding, which is like the wrapper, but inside, if it's all the same, like the Air India case you mentioned, it's not going to make a difference. So you as a consultant, you are giving the branding idea, right? But with this operationalization of the thing or the internal marketing, like, because especially if it's a service brand, your employees have to be on board, right? So do you play a role in that in some way?
We do, and it really just depends on how holistic a program that we do with our clients. In theory, we take our clients through the entire brand transformation wheel. So it starts, Paramita, with brand strategy. So how is the brand going to serve the ambitions of the business? So clearly articulating the purpose, the positioning, the personality, the values of the brand. So all of the strategic elements. So defining the brand first. The second element is brand expression. So how does this strategy come to life in the way the brand looks, how it feels, how it talks, all the expression elements. It then moves into brand experience. How will our customers and other stakeholders experience the brand online, offline, through physical interactions, human interactions, and digital interactions? Then, of course, is using the brand as a catalyst for cultural transformation.
Yes.
So we have worked with many clients where the meaning of the brand is embedded deeply into the organization. So Mahindra, for example, Rise, which was the purpose that they had defined, we started working with them on identity transformation. But we were sure to point out how the brand has to get into strategic planning, into the HR, and how Mahindra even describes what an ideal Mahindra employee would be. They instituted Rise Awards so that people who really exemplify the new brand are rewarded. So that's really using brand as a catalyst for cultural transformation. You then have to ensure that there are very thorough brand management, brand governance rules in place so that the brand is managed and equity is built. And then we also equip our clients with brand performance measures. So you can really keep an eye, like you do on Net Promoter Score and other metrics of the business, on how differentiated, relevant, regarded, and knowledgeable your brand is in the eyes of your customers. So in theory, that's end-to-end brand transformation. Some clients are most interested in brand strategy. Others will go from strategy to experience. Others might do the whole thing. So it really just depends on our clients. In the US and Europe, many of the big global brands who transform themselves just look at every element of it. So whether it's a BP or a Accenture or FedEx, when they're going in for rebranding, it is end to end. No stones left unturned.
Right. So would you also do a brand audit? So for companies that you are helping transform, would you also do a brand audit after some time to see that whether they have actually been able to reach there or give them consultancy on that?
We can, and this comes back to culture. In the Indian context, there's a lot of excitement about launching the brand, and then people somehow forget about it. You see 3 years later says, okay, what exactly did this achieve? Have we
Yeah.
been keeping enough? So I think, Paramita, there's a lot of room for growth for a culture of education.
Right.
We have been involved in far too many rebrands where the dust quickly settles after the launch and everyone's forgotten about it. Very
Yes.
few, I would say 1 in 10, that truly follow up on how to be at it. Not just the journey. And the work is never done. You have to keep pouring in equity into your brand. And those are the kinds of companies who really do well.
Right, I totally understand. Recently I saw that you did some amazing work for a resort in Sri Lanka. So I was really curious, like with a hotel brand like we were talking about, it is about the experience. So, and I know that you love going to Sri Lanka, so I'm imagining that you have been a customer there as well. So can you tell us something about that brand transformation that you did? How did it really go? And what areas of the identity did you focus on, and how was the entire transformation done?
Yeah, we've been doing work in Sri Lanka. We have a partner there. The last 8 years, we must have worked on 20-25 brand transformation projects. Really heartening to see how clients in Sri Lanka also value brand and the role that brand can play in driving business success. The hospitality group that we worked with is Cinnamon. Cinnamon is part of John Keells. John Keells is the largest company in Sri Lanka, like the Tata of Sri Lanka, if you will, across many, many sectors. And Cinnamon had several brands in the portfolio, but they didn't necessarily have the resources to maintain those brands. So they had made a strategic call along with brand finance that they will just have one brand in the portfolio. But they had different levels of service that they wanted to target to different levels of customers. So it was the whole redefinition and revitalization of the Cinnamon master brand and how it would go from 3-star to 4-star to 5-star to even 6-star, how that gets expressed at an identity level, how the brand is taken into culture, and then how the brand is the platform for experience creation. I must say, Cinnamon, if you go to Sri Lanka and Colombo or any of the other resorts, you will see a very well thought out experience. So whether it's the arrival experience, the in-room experience, the kind of amenities that they have, all of it adds up to this notion of inspired and vibrant living that the Cinnamon brand wanted to stand for a younger, more energetic consumer who was looking at hospitality brands to open up a world of amazing experiences for them. I'm very pleased with that because over the years they've executed it really well. Now they're facing growth again and they may be relooking at it, but that's the nature of branding and brand architecture. It's very, very dynamic. It constantly evolves. Nothing is static.
Right. So in this, this transformation from brand identity to brand transformation, that journey, and I know that you are an expert in this, can you tell us some stories which stand out in your career? Like, things that were difficult to do, not easy. Sometimes there is employee resistance as well. There is also, some people might get sacked, so to say, and you are not fitting in anymore. So all those handling, like, if you can give us some instance from your career, really interesting, challenging.
This is an old story, but it really does cover everything. But it was truly holistic, and this was taking the Taj Indian hotels from one brand that was stretched from 2.5, 3-star all the way to 7-star to very distinct brands in the portfolio. The strategy of the Taj has evolved since we did the work in 2005, 2006. But it was then when we worked with the group to identify that they were best served by creating different brands for different segments. The challenge was that at the top end, luxury, many new hospitality brands, like we talked about before, had entered the market. And Taj's differentiation was beginning to decline. It was no longer seen as luxury. So the whole of it was to put Taj right at the top again as a luxury brand and prevent the usage of Taj in 3-star, 4-star settings. So if you're going to do that, then you need new brands to play in those segments. That's where we created Vivanta by Taj. Now it's just Vivanta, the Gateway Hotels, which I believe has been retired as a brand, and Ginger, which is thriving. So different focused brands for different customer segments. And in fact, Credit Suisse First Boston identified the Taj in 2012 as one of the 27 great brands of tomorrow globally. And they felt that the segmentation and portfolio strategy had really helped them to take on the new competitors in the market and maintain their share. It was very challenging because this project happened over years and years. And Paramita, you're an employee, you worked for the Taj for many, many years, and suddenly you don't have the Taj on your business card anymore. It's very difficult. In fact, we used to say this, but it's actually true. The in the marriage market suddenly plummets. Who's Gateway? You used to be general manager of the Taj. It had a certain standing in society. And so the organization and the worked really hard in convincing employees of the new strategy, transitioning them to a new identity. But what we did was the corporate was still Taj Group. So people felt they might be working at Ginger, Vivanta, but they're part of the Taj Group. That was the previous strategy. It's changed now. But that was a huge challenge. The second one was partners. They had a lot of partners because they worked through management contracts. And the new partners said, we don't want a Vivanta brand. We don't want to build a Vivanta brand. What's that? So convincing partners to invest in a new brand, something that the team had to work hard on as well. And so that process took a while, but they were able to transform the business across many dimensions to become a branded, brand-led company. And today they are coming out with new brands with great agility and speed. You know, I must congratulate Puneet Chatwal and his team. They created the Cumin brand to respond to food at home from the cloud kitchens of the Taj, and a lot more. I think they have Ama, which is the local, at-home brand. You know, when you travel around, homestay. That's the right word. Homestay brands. So it's very good to see them have these strong brands, and I'd like to play a part in transforming them from a single brand company to a multi-brand company that's truly winning in different aspects of the hospitality. That's one story that I enjoy. The other more current story, if I were to say the unicorns of the world, the brands, the one that we were involved in was transforming Oben Insurance into digital. Insurance is one of the fastest growing insurance companies. It's a unicorn going from strength. And we were involved in helping them define a very proposition around simplicity for the brand that then led to a very simple name, Digit, which also spoke to the fact that they were the first D2C brand. And then an entire experience for the brand that truly signals it. So I'm very proud when I look at Digit and how strong it's going, because the foundation of the brand and the identity held it. And one of my favorites, Paramita, I talk about it a lot, but airport, we were truly the first one to look at airports not as pit stops in your journey, but truly as a destination in themselves. And for an Indian airport to truly speak of its provenance and have a cultural connect emotional connect. So we designed T2 in Delhi, Terminal 3, sorry, in Delhi, where everything from the canyon wall, the big mudra wall, which was designed, to the mother baby elephant, the sun Surya Namaskars, to all of the art which was super case in really using space to create an identity. And after that, a lot of airports have followed suit, and you see replicas of that. I think Bombay has done a good job as well, and you go to Hyderabad or Bengaluru, airports have become destinations in themselves. Bangalore has done an amazing job of the whole outside that has been created as a destination as well. But I'd like to think that we played a role in truly helping the nation understand what brand experience is. So those are my favorite stories. I can keep going on and on, but we want to invite the audience to ask questions.
Yes. I had many questions myself, but I think I will stop myself. Just wanted to say that T3 is so wonderful. I try to fly from T3 and intentionally don't take other airports in Delhi because it's so beautiful. And that idea of art, appreciation of art, it's so important. I think our programs and our educational programs, be it degree programs or non-degree programs, they don't focus enough on it, and there is so much necessity to do it. In Shivnagar University, we of course have a department of arts and dance and all that, and that really helps us to give a holistic experience to our students. So I'll now open it up to the audience to ask questions. If you have questions, please write it in the Q&A section. There are plenty of questions which have already come in, so I'll start picking some of them. So the first question, I think, is from Ritik. So I will, so this is the question. This is by Ritik. So he is in MA second year. He's saying, as we talk about the candy being unwrapped, is it because of the informational boom that we have been witnessing in the last decade? If yes, how to control the brand narrative among such a huge audience, especially when literally anyone can sabotage the brand image using social media?
Brilliant question, Ritik. I really love the question. I think it's such a pertinent one. Transparency, digital has created, right? You have to imagine that your brand is naked every day because you are scrutinized. I don't think you can ever hope to control. You can only influence. And you have to be active all over in every media. In fact, today I was reading about this brand, a new fan brand, a D2C brand, and how they've gone from 0 to 300 crores. And one of the pieces of advice that the marketing head was giving was how they monitor social media for all negative reviews, and they constantly try to understand, respond, and engage with their consumers on both positive and negative feedback. So good question. The way to do it is also to over-index on certain touch points. So if you look at these airlines, we've worked with over 80 airlines around the world. So airlines are always my favorite example. Think about Indigo. They don't control air traffic. They don't control the airport experience. You can have a really crappy experience at the airport, or your flight could be delayed inordinately for no fault of Indigo's, and you may get really upset. But the overall Indigo experience brings a smile to your face, whether it's the candy, nut boxes, or the way in which the staff interact with you, or just the smoothness of the entire experience. They over-index on certain touch points where they can control. So the in-flight experience is totally under their control, and it's brilliantly done. So when you do that, then you can hope that your consumers will forgive you for a few bad experiences that they may have, because overall, you're doing a really, really good job. But you're right. That's why brand management is a very difficult job today, because There might be false narratives out there and you can't do very much. I mean, look at all the hospitality guys, right? The competitors go and write bad reviews. It's all fictitious, but that's part of the game today in brand management. But excellent question. Digital what has made the candy unwrap. I actually have a few more details. There is an article that I wrote for Brand Equity saying that the candy has been unwrapped. So if you just search on Google, unwrapped candy Lulu Raghavan, I'm sure you can find it. It has more details of what has changed and what are the implications for brand managers.
Thank you for that, Lulu. So the second question is from, I'm trying to figure out the way to read this. It is from Pranav. Pranav is in MBA second year. He's asking, I have a question regarding food brands. As we see, a lot of the food brands have made their image around labels, whether it is non-GMO, organic, etc. Who have become internet influencers who are trying to dismantle these labels and trying to educate the consumers to choose better and not to be lured by these labels. What should these brands do? Should they still stick up with their image, relying on their most loyal customers?
That's a really key one. At the end of the day, in this digital transparency, you have to be authentic. So if you're a food brand who believes in a particular scientist or a particular institute which has given you a certification, you have to go to market with that. I would just say that you can't build a brand on false claims. So as long as an entrepreneur, you are not building a brand and a business on weak claims or weak benefits, or if you're over-exaggerating the scientific benefits or health benefits, ultimately it will catch up with you. You know, you may get to 20 crores or 50 crores, but the minute you get to 300 or 500 crores, the level of scrutiny on you will be so much that any false claims will be undone as you truly expand your scale. So not a good strategy to build something on a weak foundation. So there are food brands out there who may be saying healthy when they're not healthy at all, so on and so forth. Don't be fooled by how successful they may currently be. At the end of the day, business and brand is truly only in the long run. Sustainable businesses are not built on inauthentic things. So beware of the boost that they can have in the short run, because it could be damaging in the long run if it's not true. And very much
Yeah. So there are so many questions. I think I have to pick and choose now. So I'm giving preference to student names now. So there are many staff and faculty here as well. So I'm giving preference to students. So Shreya,
so hard, Paramita. I'm only looking at you. I would love to feel
I
the audience's energy.
I know, right? So this platform doesn't allow others to come. Like if it was a Zoom or something, you could have seen people, right? I will pass that on to Sunil and tell him that, can there be this platform be modified to have other people here? So the next one is by Shreya Gulati, again our student. What is the role of aspects like semiotics in brand identity and transformation in the digital age specifically?
Semiotics, is that the question?
Yes. The role semiotics play in brand identity and transformation in the digital age.
I think it's hugely important, right? Because at the end of the day, depending on the category, the visual and the verbal attraction of the brand is what gets you in the first instance. So the codes that you send out in terms of the color palette, symbols that you use, very, very important. If you're a luxury brand, but don't have the codes of luxury. So if your information, let's say your digital ad is super cluttered, that's not the language of luxury. You won't come across as a luxurious brand. Semiotics is interesting because as you think about differentiation, you have to have some codes that you're part of the category. So if you're wine brand, you have to have some wine codes, but then you also have to break some codes to stand out. So it's really a fine balance. And some brands completely ignore all codes of the category and are still successful, but they build the brand in their own way. Think of Bira, for example. Whoever thought that a monkey on... Right? If you did a semiotic analysis, maybe the Bira brand would never have gotten off the ground. So there is a role to play categories more than others, and it also depends on how the brand is constructed. So Bira is a very maverick, challenging the authority kind of brand, so I suppose they can get away with that.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, very important. The better you understand semiotics, the greater the connect that you can have with your consumer or customer.
So the next question, thank you. So the next question is by Ishani Jamwal. She's asking, it just went away. Yeah. Question on, yes. I have a question on some of the global trends in branding that we have observed emerging and how they're impacting brand transformation in India. So from global to India, is there a connection?
I would say 3: purpose, sustainability, and culture. When it comes to corporate brand transformation, there's a huge focus on purpose. So really thinking about the value that the corporate brand delivers to stakeholders beyond shareholders. You remember that before, the entire focus was on returns, on financial success. But now there's a more holistic view of success. And a lot of companies are asking themselves, what do we truly stand for? Who do we serve? What's the value that we bring across the stakeholder spectrum? And why is it that we uniquely exist? Why does the world need another mobility brand? Why does the world need another airline, right? So really thinking through your existential raison d'etre has become very important for corporate brands. Related to that is sustainability. Everyone recognizes that just as digital transformation was a huge imperative in the last decade, sustainable transformation will be the imperative for the coming decade. Mm-hmm. So the carbon footprint, how you operate, every level of sustainability beyond just being green, looking at all of the UN SDG goals, ESG and the ESG is very important. And it's not just global. I believe in India, I read a statistic that 60% of corporates in India are paying attention to ESG. And there's also going to be a social exchange that the government is planning to set up to measure how seriously companies are taking sustainability. So that's the second. So purpose, sustainability. And third, I would say, is culture. In the last 5 or 10 years, there's been accelerating emphasis on brand as a tool for cultural transformation. So employees, how they live the brand, how they experience the brand, including the workspace, and even the meaning of work and the future of work for every company. Especially post-pandemic, I think a lot of companies are reimagining what does work even mean? What does it mean for the workforce? How do they engage? How do we attract? How do we retain? How do we make our most loyal employees the ambassadors of our brand? So I would say purpose, sustainability, culture are some of the huge ways in which corporate brands are looking at transformation, and of course experience. It's all anchored in experience. Experience is a meta theme, if you will.
So there are other questions, but I think Ishani just asked on the brand transformation thing. There are other questions from some of my colleagues, but I know that we have only 6 minutes left. So I have some questions to ask you from a teaching perspective. If I have to teach my students a few things like research techniques and tools, what are the things that I should specifically keep in mind that they should go out with these skills in terms of research tools and techniques?
Paramita, I think you need to teach your students to ask better questions. when there's a brief or somebody gives us an assignment, do we actually explore what the problem is? Now, others would probably phrase it as some to truly frame problems. How you articulate the problem can have a huge impact on the kind of responses, the research direction. So really framing the problem, I think, is something that requires more teaching. The second one I would say is just we all have verbal diarrhea. In all our reports, we're just too verbose, and nobody has time in the corporate world. So how do you take a lot of information, and academics are really good with drawing out tons of information, but how do you synthesize it and present the most clear, crisp, and convincing? I think that's a tool, a research tool and a research skill, which is going to be highly sought after. And then, of course, the most critical is empathy with your stakeholders, especially with consumers. Can you teach your students both low fidelity and high fidelity methods of truly understanding consumers? It could be conversations, it could be going into their homes, it could be, easy surveys, or it could be a highly complex survey, or it could be even using artificial intelligence and neuro-linguistic tools to understand what's going on in the brain. So from the simple to the more complex, research methodologies for students becoming professionals to truly understand their consumer or their customers better. So ask better questions, summarize, synthesize information better, and have a plethora of tools for better consumer understanding.
Absolutely. So there is 3 minutes left, so I should not be selfish and keep you to myself. So I'll take some of the questions that some of my colleagues have asked. I think Chetna had a question, Chetna Mehra. I'm trying to go there. Yeah. As touch points multiply, increasingly brand conversations are fragmented across mediums. So how do brand custodians navigate this and build a brand identity which is consistent across mediums?
I think that's the task, right? We work with so many FMCG clients, and silos happen and the brand gets fractured. So somebody needs to be taking a more macro view of the brand and say, how are we showing up on social media? How are we showing up in our ads? How are we showing up in our packaging? How do we speak to our customers? It's plotting all of the touch points, looking for patterns, and then having a simple, clear system, reducing the messaging. And just sometimes it's boring. Brand managers get bored and therefore create more complication. But the consumer's thinking about your brand ever so slightly, not as much as you're thinking about your brand. So being simple, being clear, and being relentlessly consistent is the way to go.
So the next one is by Sumit, again my colleague. Sumit is asking, marketing and measurement are becoming close, and what is your view on this impacting brand managers?
Absolutely. In fact, we have an insights and analytics practice that has seen the most amount of growth, especially in the US and Europe, which are more advanced markets for marketing. Any brand transformation exercise is undertaken only with the due levels of risk mitigation that has happened, which means that a lot of investment goes into understanding the impact of the brand transformation on the revenue, on the profitability, and other financial metrics. And so it's really quite critical, that sort of decision making. Now, when it comes to measurement, we have tools like Brand Asset Valuator, customized brand tracks, imagery, measures, NPS. Depending on the category and the company, brands are being a lot more rigorous and disciplined about keeping an eye on the metrics that they truly want to impact. We've worked with the Mahindra Group for many, many years, and the Global Corporate Strategy team does an annual brand track where they measure how Mahindra is viewed across audiences in India and global on parameters like global, innovative, progressive, dynamic. So really keeping an eye on how the brand is being perceived is important. It's harder, Sumit, to isolate the impact of branding at a corporate. In a packaging exercise, you can attribute uplift in sales to a change in packaging. But at a corporate level, there are so many elements that impact the success of a brand or rebrand. Measurement is difficult, but there is increasing scrutiny and tracking on the impact that the brand should be having post the transfer.
Thank you so much. We do have another question, but I know that we are at 1 o'clock, so if you have other commitments, I will not keep you back. So whatever you want to do.
You can stay for a couple of minutes.
Okay.
I do have I apologize for the technology snafu, so let's extend it by a few more minutes.
Sure.
I'll just keep talking. I'll just tell my...
Sure. Yeah. So this is the last question, my colleague Vinny. She's asking, in startups, a lot of focus needs to be on driving valuations versus brand value. What is your view on the trend and how should brands navigate it?
I think it's the wrong area of focus. If entrepreneurs and their teams would truly focus on creating value for customers, if they obsessed about their customers and creating differentiation for them, the valuation will come on its own. And brand value is created by being differentiated, by being relevant, and for consistently serving the customer in new and exciting ways. So I think valuation is an outcome. Even brand value is an outcome. The focus needs to be on the customer experience and ensuring that the customers that you serve have a superlative experience of the brand, and you find fresh ways of growing your customer base. If you do that well, attracting and retaining customers, it sounds very easy and not so exciting, but that's the crux of how a business grows, attracting and retaining customers. And what's the role of marketing? Is to create brand, to create demand to attract. That's all it is. But people are focused on valuation, and if you're focused on the outcome, you're not actually going to, right? If they say, as a professor, I'm sure you're telling your students, do the input. The output will take care of itself. Work hard, put in the hours, read lots, study. But if you focus and obsess on the marks, how are you ever going to get it?
Yeah, totally makes sense. So, academic research that happens, does it have any impact on practice? Or do you see any gap between what academics do and what practitioners like you do? And is there a way to talk to each other, so to say?
I think in this field especially, Paramita, I think there's a lot of scope for more collaboration. We are dying for more research and more studies to demonstrate that brand matters, that marketing plays a really important role. Increasingly, marketing has come under scrutiny in terms of the value that it provides, but it is the most important function. The function of marketing is to create demand, to bring in customers. Without customers, there is no business. Not all businesses equally understand that. So if academic research can strengthen the link between investing in brand and business success, there are lots of studies globally and research, including by Kantar, Millward Brown, that shows the link between brand and business is there, but there's a lot more work to be done, innovative work to be done. I think it'll be hugely beneficial for the focus is on why brand matters, and more research, more interesting linkages between brand and business success, I think would be hugely beneficial, and the industry will wake up to the power of academic research in these areas.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So thank you, Lulu, so much. This was such a great learning experience. I'm sure we'll have more interaction, and I might actually I'll ask some of my students to write a short excerpt on what we did today and send it across to you so that we can circulate it as well.
I'm very active on LinkedIn and Instagram. Raghavan. I also have a website, luluraghavan.com, and I have a newsletter So if anybody enjoyed the conversation today and they want to engage, they can just drop me a message and say they were at the talk today and that they wanted to connect. And I'm pretty responsive, happy to engage if they have additional questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping that we will be in touch. Thank you so much, Lulu.
Thank you for the lovely questions. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.